Good evening, Internet. Thank you for joining us tonight on our course for Nowhere. I'm your host, the Media Nomad, and with me, as always, are Ivy and DJ Aaron.
Hello, everyone.
I hate you right now.
The running gag will continue until I get bored with the running gag. That is the rule.
You're never going to get bored with it.
You see. We'll see. I have a short attention span, so we'll see.
Oh.
So it's like real. So it's actually. Let me see if I can get this. If I can actually get this right. If I'm trying to get it right, it's Arma Corth.
That's
okay.
Right.
Yay!
Which means I legit thought it was Arma Core, and I've been writing core on all of your tags and all of our descriptions online.
But then it just feels like I'm just trying to rip something off of a giant mech video game, and it's not.
Like, you can do a lot worse than ripping off a giant mech game.
That's true, but I can do better and more original than trying to make a name based off of Armored Core.
Armored Core. Fuck, I need to play that. That's the one with the giant-ass controller, right?
I don't know. When I played it, it was on Xbox 360 and PS2. They had different games. It's like the Saga. And the best one is on PS2, and it's called Last Raven, because the customizability and gaming mechanics are just fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
All right, so transitioning from mechs to mech anime to a studio that did mech anime, that now they did a little magical girl show called Little Witch Academia, which we watched this week.
Nice. That was great. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
Me neither.
Yeah, so the guys behind the main reason I picked Little Witch Academia, well, we had a whole production cycle thing where we were going to try and do Voltron, and then we wound up maybe not having Ivy, and we were going to do magical girl stuff for her because that's her favorite, and we want to do something nice for her because she may not have been able to make it for the show. And we just went through Netflix and we found the easiest, closest thing to a magical girl movie we could watch in time for getting the episode up.
Yeah, but I'm glad I managed to make it for this one because this was delightful for me. So I'm gonna enjoy talking about it.
And then you'll have me over in the left-hand corner telling you how much I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be an interesting duality here.
Well, I know.
Sam, you're gonna have to play mediator.
Fuck. Well, I know a big reason that I went with this one is because I recognized the art style. It looked like Studio Trigger, and they're the guys who they're previously Gainax employees, and two of the bigger things they worked on before starting their own studio, they had Gurren Lagann and Panty and Stocking, and then they spun off into do Studio Trigger, and they did awesome series like Kill la Kill and Ninja Slayer, which I think we covered Ninja Slayer on the predecessor to this podcast.
And I have to say that definitely came across in watching these. The one thing that I did thoroughly enjoy out of all this was the art style and direction, because all of the background and all the detail put into them with the color palettes were very nice and very keyed towards the demographic of what they're going for in these little mini movies. Very kiddie, very rounded shaped, sort of picturesque worlds and magical. I did like that a lot.
Yeah, because Netflix had two feature-length films. Strange enough, I think they were both called Little Witch Academia. I think they both had the same title.
The second one had a subtitle.
What was the subtitle on the second
Parade.
one? Magical. That was right. The second one had Magical Parade.
Or Enchanted Parade. Sorry, I think it was Enchanted. Either way, though it's kind of odd because the first one is just half an hour, and then the second one is a full hour.
Yeah, it looks like the first movie, the half an hour one was 25 minutes ish. It looked more like it was a pilot for a separate series, and then we got a follow-up in Magical Parade.
On the Wikipedia, it was saying that the original thing was part of a compilation of things for... it was released in theaters as part of a showcase of the young animator training or something along those lines. Let's see what it says.
Yeah, it was Enchanted Parade.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Young Animator Training Projects, Anime Mirai, 2013 project. And then the short film after that was partially funded through Kickstarter, it says so.
All right.
Though they're actually doing an anime series that has been airing since January in Japan, which we did not watch, but
no, because
we watched the movies.
Part of the reason we picked this was because it was short and easy, because we weren't sure if you could make it, and we wanted to save the longer Voltron review for you. And Arma didn't look like it would get finished with the second season of Voltron in time to get to recording, so we just decided we'd go with the easier thing to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for that, by the way.
Sure. I will say easy to get through is probably the best description of these movies. Like, they are very much pure fluff. There's not a lot to dig into. There's not a lot of dissection. It's very much just, they have a trope. It very much just feels like anime Harry Potter. And it's the magical girls. They're at the magical girl school. They're gonna do some magic. They might learn some things about friendship, and that's it.
Yeah. But I think it is pretty delightful, and it is definitely enjoyable for kids. I mean, it's clearly child-oriented, so, if we have any listeners who are looking for things for their kids to watch, this would be good. Did you guys watch it dubbed or subbed?
I always tend to do dub.
I watched it subbed.
Yeah, me too. But that's mainly because I only kind of need the subtitles, so.
I will say I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get anything too ridiculous out of this, because it was Studio Trigger, and these are the guys who did the show about the sentient clothes that are fought by an army of nudists.
Yeah.
And I was expecting something really subversive, and no, it looked like they wanted to put out something that was just this delightful little short film for kids, and they nailed it.
What was the English voice acting like from the person who watched the dub? Was it acceptable?
Yeah, it was totally. I saw no issues with it, which is actually pretty good, because I know for stuff like Gurren Lagann, and to a lesser extent Kill la Kill, the subject matter was so over the top, and Americans just they can't push it over that limit. Because most Americans, it seems like they're trying to push, but they're still holding back a little bit. Whereas if you listen to the Japanese voice actors, they're letting everything out and leaving everything on the floor.
Yeah, and there's something sort of like a buffer in a language that isn't your native language. Ridiculous things don't sound quite so ridiculous.
Right. And it feels very clear that the voice actors, they're trying to stay in character, and I don't do much voice acting. I did a little bit back in college, but I will say, when you're already trying to maintain a certain voice that's not your normal speaking voice, it's harder to necessarily get the same range out of that as if you were just normally speaking.
Oh, I see.
I can attest to that. That's why I like shows such as Archer, where you can tell the voice actors are simply talking like themselves, and they bring it across with more, pizzazz, per se.
Right. That's not to say a good voice actor can't push it over the top in a different voice. There are plenty who can, and that's why they're professionals, and we are not. My personal favorite being Scott McNeil, because he can be 4 people in a scene and you'll never know it.
Yeah.
There's another good comparison.
Yeah, so anyway, Arma, why didn't you like it?
Well,
let's start off with the nice first. Get your happy things out of the way.
So usually we give a little, I don't know. I guess we usually give a spoiler-free description of the plot, I suppose.
All right.
I think it's safe to say that in this case we don't have to worry about that simply because of how long it is. It's not very long.
Yeah,
At all.
there are no real
Really
surprises.
need to know is like all girls school Harry Potter, except the Muggles know that there's magic and they don't care.
It feels like Harry Potter meets My Little Pony.
Yeah.
And
you already gave away the plot per se by saying that the second one is about a parade. There's the plot. That's entirely the plot right there. There's supposed to be a parade outside of this academy, and then, of course, something goes wrong, and bad things start happening. And then the girls have to make good things happen. Very cut and dry, very simple stuff. And that's good, because it's geared towards children. It's nothing too over the top and fantastical, but the imagery makes it over the top and fantastical. The animation is very good in bringing across these mystical elements and still bringing childish hues into it with fading and blending of all sorts of pastel colors. I was really impressed with that.
Well, that's kind of the studio signatures. They have like these very bright colors. There's a lot of high contrast. There's a lot of really sharp. I guess it's a combination of these like soft features for things like faces, but then having really jagged, really detailed things around it. Like if you the biggest giveaway, because there's a couple of, I think they call it the magical rod in this, and I think that's the biggest giveaway that it was a Studio Trigger series, because it very much looks like something that could have fallen out of Gurren Lagann or Kill la Kill.
I could agree with that.
It's the shiny rod, by the way.
Was it the shiny rod?
Yeah, it is. Shiny rod, which turns into a shiny arrow and then gets shot into a dragon.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
No, there's nothing wrong with that if you want simple. Unfortunately, being the adult person that I am, simple is boring to me at this point. And that's why this didn't come across well with me, because looking at the characters and how they interact with each other, it's very simple and it's very boring. They could have given these girls a lot more personality and a lot more, badassery. And when you're getting into a kid's show, I think you want more of that. In this case, I'd want to watch Kill la Kill over this, not because of how ridiculous Kill la Kill is, but because the characters seem to have these dire purposes that they're doing things for, and it makes it all seem a little bit more cohesive and interesting to me. In this, you just get a bunch of kids, all sort of disillusioned, coming together for the sake of it being a kid's show, and making something happen for the sake of making something happen, which I did not enjoy that aspect of it.
I have to say that I disagree, simply because, it is simple, and I do watch it from the point of view of not necessarily what do I get out of this, but what would kids get out of this. And I think that to some extent that anime archetypes, and it is true that these characters fall into certain anime tropes, but to some extent they are based on things that occur in real people and kind of personality types you can encounter. And so I feel like this is sort of giving a fun package to teaching about interpersonal relationships and having faith in yourself. You have Diana's character, who really is just much, much better at magic than the other girls, but she is overconfident and is the one who accidentally releases the dragon. And so, it's about, part of the lesson is, don't be arrogant. And later on, even though nobody in the magical community has any regard for Shiny Chariot, I think the show is kind of being no matter what other people say about your idols, if you get something important from that, if you get motivation from that, hang on to it. Just screw the haters. Don't give in to that. And I enjoyed that lesson out of it.
Well, I know personally, whenever I approach something, my barometer for how I will evaluate it is usually how good is it at being what it's trying to be. And it feels like Little Witch Academia was very much trying to be something very simple. It looks like they're trying to take a swing at a very popular genre. They're grabbing some tropes and they're just seeing what fun they can have with it. And it is, I guess I'm going to say, almost a little bit refreshing to see that they can do something that's kid friendly if they want to, that they don't have to try and like add anything like violence or nudity, which are fun in their other series, but to see that they can still function without some of that. So in terms of, is this a show that I would feel like I could put a 5-year-old in front of and not worry that it's going to rot their brain? And I'm going to say yes. This very much succeeds at being very simple. It's very much for kids. I feel like this is something kids can get a lot out of. I know I used to actually help babysit for a family with 2 little ones, and I can say for certain that the 6-year-old would have absolutely loved this. Like, this would be going on repeat if the 6-year-old ever saw this. So I know she would have loved it. And yeah, it does what it needs to do.
Well, I can see where you're both coming from that, and a lot of what you're saying makes sense to me. I can get behind the fact that they're trying to get these character elements across that are similar to real life situations, but I also think it's instilling a little bit of falsehood in those ideas, because you've got your main character. What was her name again?
I think it was
Akko.
Akko.
Yeah.
Thank you. Akko, and she is really, really good at magic, but she's like naturally gifted at it, and she ends up saving everybody at the end of the first episode by shooting the arrow based off of her view of her inspiration, in this case, who was, I can't remember that character's name either. I can't remember any of the characters' names. That's another thing that annoyed me about the show. It didn't strike
Shiny
with
Chariot.
me. Thank you. It didn't strike with me well enough to remember the names. However, she's naturally good at magic, but she doesn't pay attention to anything in the courses, and that makes sense. I can see where people are coming from with that, because you get a lot of people like that in real life. But at the end of the episode, she saves everybody, and where do you see that happen in real life? Somebody who's naturally good at something making everything come together. It doesn't happen very often. You see a lot more people putting in a lot of time and dedication into something and then getting something positive out of it because of what they put into it, not necessarily just naturally being good at it.
Well,
does that make sense?
See, for me, when I'm watching her, she's gifted, but she doesn't seem to know she is. I know, like, the first time we see her is she's fallen asleep in history class, which is something it's very clearly a derivative of Harry Potter. Harry Potter did the same thing all the time. But we also see her trying in her later things and then failing spectacularly, particularly with flying on a broom, because to make a point to say she's not from a magical family, she kind of wound up there. But what was it that got her in there that she really shouldn't have, or she just barely made the cut to get in? And we see her struggling, and she keeps working at it. And she will occasionally get her crap together long enough to do something important that she needs to do, usually in connection to the shiny rod, which seems to be like her magical power up.
I think this kind of harkens back to Sailor Moon and the magical girl genre at large, because like in Sailor Moon, when I watched it as a kid, I kind of like the message that I got from watching it was, it's great to be like smart or physically athletic or spiritual or, whatever. But Sailor Moon, the one who ultimately saves the day, what she is above anything else is kind, just unbelievably kind-hearted. And that's like the highest virtue. And so her power comes from her heart and her compassion, and not from, other things. And I think they're kind of going with sort of a similar message with this. Akko's power doesn't come necessarily from being naturally gifted with magic. It comes from confidence, being true to herself. They're not trying to say that she's a magical genius or anything. They're showing that it's her like purity of purpose and willingness, to believe and to have faith that is ultimately the source of her power. And when she does things right, it's because of the confidence.
I'm glad that
I
you
can see how that would be a good thing on the whole for children to learn, because a lot of people have confidence issues. Heck, I have confidence issues. It's becoming more and more widespread. But at the same time, you don't see a lot of the rationale coming behind that. It's mostly just boisterous confidence. Except for in the montage scene in the second episode, where you see her trying to prep and stage things a little bit more for that parade.
Yeah.
You do a little bit more of it there. But in the first episode, you don't get any of that. It's just her brimming with confidence and smashing through objectives with willy-nilly, not even thinking about much of anything. They even say at the beginning of them going into the dungeon, hey, the point of this isn't to defeat the monsters. And she's trying to defeat the monsters right off the bat, which is just this little cute sprite-looking globule thing. So, overzealousness turning into what? At the end, saving everybody? I don't necessarily think that's the best thing to instill in children.
Well, I saw the overzealousness, and to me that's less her being overconfident and more feeling like she is insecure and she has something to prove. She knows that she's not particularly gifted, she knows that she's struggling, and so she's going to try and take on bigger and bigger obstacles because she knows she has to prove herself in the eyes of her peers and probably her teachers too. And a lot of times that comes across as, that overconfidence.
Okay. And at the end, do we want to really try to show somebody going over the brim, trying to prove themselves to somebody else? Because that isn't necessarily a good thing either, per se.
Well, she got... Well, let's see here. The Draco Malfoy stand-in. What was... Diana. She was more of a legit overconfident. And that she got into stuff she shouldn't have, and she's basically the reason that the magical dragon erupted and started trying to eat the school. And then you had Akko by the end. She's terrified, and it's gone less from she's doing what she does because she feels like she has to prove herself, and she actually understands what's at stake, and she's terrified. And even though she's terrified, she has that little bit of faith or a little bit of confidence from her idol shining through, and with that she's able to tap into the shiny rod and use that to vanquish the dragon.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of false bravado, kind of giving her that push to find the real thing.
Well, how's it go? Fake it till you make it?
Yeah, it's fake it till you make it is the moral of this by the end. I'll also say too, it's as far as character development goes, I'm actually going to say they did a lot with what they had, because the first movie they had, it was roughly 25 minutes to establish the characters, do the world building, set up and then do the full plot start to finish. So it was a lot to try to really cram in into just a short amount of time. In fact, if you look at a lot of even like 20-minute shows, the pilot episodes will usually run a full 40, where this kind of condensed it all into just 25. So I'm willing to forgive a little bit of that, and because we treated this like one movie, but it was actually two, the second one was just an hour, so given how short they were, I'm willing to forgive just how, whether or not they might actually be a little bit underdeveloped. I think they did a lot with what they had.
Yeah, I agree.
I can respect that.
And I'm actually really glad Ivy brought up Sailor Moon, because I got the first season of Sailor Moon Crystal for my girlfriend, and I watched the whole first season with her. And yeah, that's moral by the end is that Usagi, I guess Serena was her name in the original English dub, the main girl.
Yeah.
They make a point of saying multiple times that she's not particularly athletic, she's not really smart. They kind of divvy up all these traits to all of her friends, but what she is she's essentially the thing that binds them together. She's the one who helps cheer them up, the one who works hard to make them happy, the one who gives them confidence, and the one who gives them all of that love they need to help push them forward to get out of their own boxes.
And I guess that's part of, well, part of my love for the magical girl genre at large. I think it influenced my opinion of magical girl academia, especially because I think watching Sailor Moon when I was young, and that moral of, being kind is the important thing, has influenced who I am as an adult in a big way. I've struggled a lot with depression and anxiety, and I've had a lot of failures, and so, but one thing that I think anybody can say about me is that I do my best to be as kind and compassionate as I can, and that's kind of what I use to, hang on to my self-worth. And so, I guess because it's all bound up in that, that's why I really love these kids shows that have, that showcase positive traits for girls to work on, if that makes sense.
I can see where you're coming from with that, because I get a lot of that too. I like trying to make the people around me happy, but unfortunately that comes with a lot of getting burned too, especially when I was younger, learning how to deal with other people who were rude and manipulative. And it's very easy to take somebody who's kind like that and mess with their head and then make them feel very inadequate. And I'd like to see a lot more of a shift from this sort of character type in television geared towards women, and more of a badass sort of archetype for female characters, because you don't get to see as much of that, and it's becoming more prevalent over time. I've noticed a growing trend of that ever since feminism started breaking forth in the 80s, but it's still not to where I'd like to see it now. I'd like to see more powerful female characters who don't give as much a shit about your feelings and will completely whoop your ass like a male character from Die Hard or something. Does that make sense too?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I agree. We're going to get into this with Voltron next week, but, I think really easily one of the male characters in Voltron could have been female, and it would have been better, more diverse. It would have added something to it, I think.
Are you talking about the Daredevil pilot character?
Well, actually, Keith, I think, would have been best as a female.
Yeah, that was Keith.
Well, I think of Lance as Daredevil pilot.
Well,
I guess he's more overconfident pilot, though.
He definitely falls into the fake it till you make it category, but let's save some of that for next week and kind of circle it around back. I will say the idea of, this, essentially having enough compassion and enough openness and enough desire to help others, that's not something that's limited to magical girl series. I know, I've seen a lot in shonen stuff too. I know Busa Renkin did it in Naruto. That was basically the whole point of the first big chunk of Naruto, was that he's an idiot, but he means well, and that meaning well is going to push him through. And I am also going to say that trying to write women as badass for the sake of just making them badass may not necessarily be the right thing to go. I'm down with seeing more of that mixed in, because the more diversity, the better. I think the best female lead we've had in anything that I've seen is, have you guys seen The Legend of Korra?
Yeah.
Because Korra, she very clearly kicks all of the ass. Unquestionably kicks a ton of ass. And especially, I love the idea that we have a female protagonist in an action show who is dark-skinned and she's muscular, and I've never seen anything like that. But what she is she's a well-written character who's also physically strong. Or I want to see, because strength and then also vulnerability, these are two different sides of the same coin, and we need to add that dimension for any gender, is that you can be strong, you can be a good fighter, you can be confident, you can be all of these things, you can kick all the ass, but you still have certain human traits about you. You are not a machine. And so all of these things kind of have to fold together, and when you get that, you have really strong characters that anyone can get into.
I agree.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about badassness for the sake of badassness, just to sort of amplify the traits that we're missing in shows like what we're talking about right now. The girl trope of trying to be kind to everybody and just supportive is very, like, 40s, 50s housewife-esque, and I want to see a shift from that towards something a little bit different. And I'd have to say, as far as female leads go, Korra is fantastic, especially in an anime show. That's very good representation. Another one I can bring up from a real film aspect would be Ripley from the Alien series.
And then I think we touched on that a little bit last week when we did our Metroid retrospective.
Yes, and she's a very good, very vulnerable character because she loses her daughter she never even got to see grow up in the second movie, Aliens, and she still goes on to try to help the human civilization by finding out what happened to this colony on this planet where the aliens attack, and still manages to kick all the ass, and still manages to save the female daughter on the planet that got abandoned after her family died. So, good lord, that's just a great big bottle of excellent right there.
It is, and I'd also like to see... No, you are right. The idea that, if you're a girl, you have to be nice is absolutely regressive. You have to be nice because you're a girl. But I do like to see more dimension, and what's coming to mind right now is even on the other side of the coin. If you guys have seen Berserk, the main character, his name is Guts, and he's a giant murder machine. But the way... The writing's good for him, because even though he is a giant murder machine, he still has some stuff going on underneath that even he doesn't understand. Because, I guess minor spoilers for Berserk, he actually tries to leave his surrogate family, mercenary group, because the leader who he looks up to and may or may not love on some multiple different levels, he worries that this character doesn't respect him enough, and that hurts his feelings, and so he wants to go.
Interesting. I've never seen that show. That's a dynamic I'd have to explore further. I want to watch that now.
It's, Berserk is a tough thing to get into because it's kind of disjointed. I know the manga's been going since the 80s. And if you
Holy crap.
But the writer kind of it's almost like George R.R. Martin-esque, where like he'll kind of put out a book when the stars align. I will say, though, the art is absolutely fantastic because he cites, like, you're an art person, you'll know. Two of his biggest influences are M.C. Escher and Hieronymus Bosch.
Oh, I definitely want to get into that now.
Now, there was a 90s anime that covers the first, like, one or two big arcs of the manga, but the 90s anime ends on a cliffhanger because he hadn't written enough at the time, and then in the intervening years we've had movies which are condensed versions of the manga plots, and then we got a full-on... Some people are calling it a reboot. It's actually a continuation of where the 90s show left off. I will say the new version, it's not awful, but there's a lot of issues with it. The animation is trying something really experimental with it, and it doesn't quite stick. Like I said, a big inspiration for the original art was M.C. Escher, which means a lot of shading, which is really hard to do in animation, so they tried to do it in 3D CG, and it doesn't always hold up. A lot of the direction is a bit... like the fight direction's a bit too chaotic. It's almost like feels a little bit like watching something from Michael Bay. And another issue I have with it is all the action tends to be really, really close. Like it feels too like the camera's too close to what's going on to really appreciate it. It's got flaws. It's definitely got flaws, but it's still Berserk, and it's still not awful. Like the stuff that makes it good is still all there. You just kind of have to work a little harder to get to the good stuff. I'd be fine covering some Berserk at some point, though, if you guys are.
I'd definitely like to get into checking that out.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah,
as far as the fight scenes go, I wish more things did distance fight scenes. I see a lot of that in regular movies now too. A lot of close up, camera pan, camera cut, half second, full second, half second edits that are just awful. And it's easier in anime to make violence happen without having that happen because nobody's getting hurt. Only characters in the show are getting hurt. So why don't people take more advantage of that? I don't understand. Look at Cowboy Bebop. They do it. They do it phenomenally. You get a lot of great fight scenes that animes are still ripping off of. It's just mind-boggling that they don't do more distance perspective on it.
Yeah, because it worked really well in Cowboy Bebop, but Cowboy Bebop's like it's almost unfair to measure things by the Cowboy Bebop yardstick because everything's going to come up short to Bebop. Although I do appreciate what you're saying about like getting some distance in the fight scenes. That's why a lot of the fight scenes in Samurai Champloo worked, especially with a character like Mugen, because he's very acrobatic, and when you pan out and you actually like get the full force of just all of the weird stuff he's doing and flying and bouncing around the screen. That works a lot better when you have some physical distance away from it.
Right. And you see a lot of that in other animes as well, like Naruto. Naruto does it, but Naruto was one of the animes that ripped off a fight scene from Cowboy Bebop, so you see where the personalities lie.
Which scene did they rip off from Bebop?
There was a Sasuke fight where it is a frame-for-frame cut from a fight in Bebop. I can't remember what scene it is. I've seen it many times compared. It just cracks me up every time I see it.
If I like YouTube that, can I find like the comparison?
I'll look it up right now while you two talk.
Anyway, circling back to my original point, is that I want to see more variety and more dimension. And those things are both going to be good. Definitely have more ladies who can kick ass. Get them something that's other than you have to be nice because nice is good, but at the same time, anyone can benefit from the mentality of you have to, it's a good thing to support your friends, help try to build them up, build those connections, and even if you do sometimes get burned, build yourself up enough to be a strong enough person to get through it. And same thing on the other side of the coin with action series. Like, yeah, you can be the strongest, toughest motherfucker to ever live, but you're still going to have some flaws no matter who you are. And you are going to have to find ways to work through those if you're going to be a complete person and not just a tool.
And damn straight, look at Rurouni Kenshin.
God, I love Kenshin. Kenshin's so good.
Yeah. What was the name of the character who is a killing machine and finds out that he's a human later on? All of his friends die in the first season because they were all part of this gang. And
Sanosuke.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good example of what we're talking about there.
Well, even like Kenshin himself, his whole shtick is that he used to be just a walking slaughterhouse, and then some bad shit happened. We don't find out too much later on, but some bad shit happened to him, and he realizes, oh wait, this is not the way I need to live my life.
Yep.
And I feel like we are drifting a lot away from the source material from Little Witch Academia.
So do I.
But I will say I think that's because there's not a whole lot there. It's fluff. It's largely inconsequential, but that's necessarily a bad thing.
I do like the periphery characters as well for the Little Witch Academia.
I gotta agree with you there. Which character was your favorite?
Well, my favorite was Tsushi. I don't.
Was she like the creepy mushroom girl?
Yeah. That would be my favorite. But I also just liked the archetypes of all three of the other delinquent students. You have.
Oh my god, they were the best part. I wish they got a little more development.
Yeah, me too. Though it's a little bit. It is a shame that to some extent they're racist. Well, not exactly racist, but they're country-based stereotypes. Because the girl who's who steals stuff and is good at athletics and everything, she's American, and the girl who eats all the time is Russian, and the girl who is the silent robot making one is German. So
I will say I love that they worked in a character there that she's in a magical school and she gets in trouble because she keeps building robots.
Yes, I really did.
That cracked me up.
And she actually,
that was phenomenal.
and she
And
built
what's funny
was like a
because
machine gun mount for her wand.
Yeah, yeah, and she's got so much character that it took me a long time to realize, wow, this character has not said a single word yet. And yet they have so much personality, and I love it.
I did like that. I also like the conductor, the music entwined magician.
Oh, the red-haired girl with the glasses.
Yeah, the little blonde girl. She actually played the most emotional, evoking part of the entire show. Was when she played the song for the entire crowd of people and demons.
Yeah.
Because that part, I was like, oh, that's actually very cool. Yes.
Lot. But yeah, yeah, I liked that, because, especially how they, had the relationship between Lotte and Akko, that, because Lotte is the quiet one, Akko can kind of go too far and, never ask her opinion or just kind of bowl right over. And I liked that they had this argument and that they, kind of resolved it out. I liked that whole thing in the second movie as sort of a lesson, for kids about trying to get along with your friends. Be mindful of how other people might feel. And on the other side, speak up for yourself. If someone is bowling you over, tell them how you feel. Try to make a listen.
And it is absolutely possible if you have a friend and you can make maybe you're not treating them well, and you may not necessarily realize you are if they don't say anything. That's also probably something that's good to know just in general, is that you do have you might have a little more influence than you think you do.
Yeah.
And even if you're meaning well, you may hit something you say or do may leave an impression you might not necessarily intend.
Yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving and giving end of both of that. And it's really interesting to get on both sides of the argument, because coming from one side, you'd be like, wow, this person doesn't understand me at all. And then coming from the other side, oh, now I get why they didn't understand me at all. Okay. So it's nice to see that in a show geared towards kids and still have the characters get along after the fact. Because a lot of times, nowadays, I see people try to express these feelings and then they never talk again. And it blows my mind, because that's not friendship.
Right.
I feel like as an adult, it's a lot harder to do that. Because being friends as an adult takes a lot more effort than friends as a kid. Because when you're friends as a kid, they're usually in your class, or they're family members, or they're in your neighborhood, and they're just kind of there, and that's who you're stuck with. But when you're an adult, you got, everyone's scattered around, everyone's at different jobs, everyone's got weird different schedules. It's a lot harder to maintain. And so if you do have something that goes wrong, it's really easy to break off that contact without even really meaning to.
I can see where you're coming from with that, but on the other end of the spectrum, I'd like to say, I think it's easier as an adult to maintain friendships because you now have a lot more tools in your arsenal that you've learned. Like, for instance, me, I have a lot more tools in my arsenal now that I've learned over time, just by trial and error, to now maintain the friendships that I care about and want to maintain, even if somebody is upset with me or I'm upset with them. Whereas when I was younger, if somebody got upset with me and I didn't understand it, I would simply brush it off and not talk to the person anymore because it was easier that way. It didn't matter to me about geographic location.
Essentially, we have the tools as adults that we gain by fucking up as younger people, is what you're saying.
That's right.
This is true.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Though in my adult life, my tactic has sort of ended up being I just surround myself with people who are chill and don't really get mad at me.
That's a very good way to be. I mean, when you get to that point, it's better, in my opinion, to have people around you that support you and build you up like that. But every once in a while, I do like having a friend who I disagree with, and I can learn from it. And that's why I enjoy these podcasts, because we can have differing opinions, talk about them, and learn something from the the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I do have friends that have different opinions from me, but, you know, I don't know. When when I was younger, I never really seemed to fit in with anybody. And then, like, once I got out of college, I fell in with a group where it was just kind of like, oh, they're not looking for faults in me. They just say hi and think that I'm okay the way I am, and I don't have to try. Amazing.
Yeah, that is a really nice thing to have. I fell into that same situation with Sam here, and the entire group that I met of them. It's a brilliant thing. High school, I feel like, is a very judgmental place.
Yeah.
Well, I know for me personally, like the worst of it was elementary school, because I had a couple of friends in elementary school, but I got bullied a lot, and then it was even worse for me because I got bullied at school, but then I had an abusive parent at home. So I grew up really, like, it was really difficult for me to be able to connect with people on pretty much any level, and it got gradually better the older I got. So I started, I got picked on less in middle school. I started making more friends. Then by high school, I was doing much better, and then even through college, things were really solidifying, and it just gotten better for me as I went.
Yeah, you were still an undergrad when I met you, huh?
Right. Actually, I was a freshman. I think it was my first semester was when we met.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I wandered into the Japanese club where you and Amelia were, and because I saw food and I was hungry. Because I was on campus during those days. I was on campus for like 13 hours a day, and I didn't necessarily have a ton of disposable income, so I was usually exhausted and starving. And so I walked past this door, and I saw they had like a little snack spread. And my first thought was, yes, this is the first time I've gotten to eat since breakfast, and it's like 5 p.m. And I just went in, and then I eventually met I met Ivy, and I met a few other people through that, because I was starving and I wanted some snacks.
And here I thought you actually like had an interest in Japanese culture.
That's not to say I didn't. I stayed for that. I came for the food is what got me in the door.
Food, stayed for the culture.
Yes.
I feel like that's almost all adulthood anymore. But on that note,
I feel
I'm
like
getting close to the end of the time that I have allotted for this.
I feel like this is a very warm moment we can end on.
Yeah.
Alright, I love you guys.
Yeah.
Love you too, man.
Yay.
Love you too.
I love you too, audience.
Yes.
Love you, a couple of people
We love
watching.
our listeners. We do.
Love you, myself, who watches this, and maybe you two that watch this, and maybe one or two other people so far.
Hey, we
I
have.
To say, after the Metroid episode, Katamari for the win.
Hey, we have our channel has 40 YouTube views. So suck it, haters. Look at that.
I have 10 of those views.
That is double digits. What now? Come at me, bro.
What's on that? Oh my gosh. Hey, I mean, we do it because we love it, right?
Right.
Yep.
No, if we were doing it for to get traction, it would probably be a very different show. It would probably not be a show I would want to listen to.
I agree.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so Arma's got to go. I've been away from Zelda Breath of the Wild for a solid few hours now, and so I'm going into withdrawal. And Ivy's had a long day, so I think on the mutual love fest is the best place to end it out.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So,
next time, tune back in for the Adventures of Voltron.
Tune in next time for the continuing galactic adventures of Netflix's Voltron, Defenders of the Universe.
I was watching the terrible 3D one, and I like that.
Don't worry, we'll work that in.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next time.
All right,
good.
Later.